Hi and welcome back to yet another video. This is the 6th episode of the story about the time when Naruto managed to harness the power of nature in his early childhood, due to which he was inducted into Anbu. Let's watch as Naruto Uzumaki takes world by storm. After you've finished watching, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started.
A scared Anko made her way through the hospital, trying to find the room Naruto was in. After waking up in her bed, which she had no idea how she got there, she had received a message from the Hokage. The message read, "Uzumaki Naruto has been hospitalized." She hadn't moved faster in all her life. How was that even possible? Her soldier boy was invincible, right? Turning the corner of the hallway, she found the room she was looking for. It was kind of hard to miss with all the bodies guarding it. There were two Anbu operatives stationed at the door she needed to get through. On the opposite side of the hall, Yugao and Hayate were sitting in waiting chairs. She decided to speak to them first. As she made her way to them, Hayate noticed her, getting up from his seat and meeting her halfway. "What happened, Hayate?" Anko asked fearfully. The Tokubetsu Jonin looked terrified, like he had seen a ghost. She was half right, he felt like he was the ghost. He shook his head. "I don't know how, but..." He looked back at the door Naruto was behind. I died last night, Anko." He was shaking, and his face expressed nothing but confusion. "What?" The snake user replied, even more confused than Hayate. "What do you mean?" "I mean I was killed last night and Naruto. He brought me back." Anko could tell that he was serious. "He reached into the pure world and brought me back." He shook his head again. "How's that even possible? How can a 12-year-old do that?" His hand rubbed the phantom wounds on his chest. "I was wounded badly, but when I came back, they were gone, completely healed." He looked Anko in the eyes. "I haven't coughed since then either. It's like when he brought me back, I was even better than before." Anko just listened to Hayate's words. What the hell happened after the sinking? "I guess something happened between him and Yugao while I was. You know, because she cried herself to sleep, muttering how terrible of a sister she is over and over again." He sighed. She couldn't wait any longer. She needed to see him with her own eyes. She needed to hear what happened from his mouth, his voice. She didn't respond to Hayate, she just walked forward towards where she knew he was. She could feel him, like he was right next to her the moment she woke up. She guessed this was the feeling he explained to her that he felt. She didn't even care that she could also feel May. She loved the feeling, and if May had to be in it, she'd put up with it. As she got to the door, she tried to walk past the very large Ushi and slender Uma. She didn't know or care who these Anbu were. She just needed to see him. She tried to reach the handle to open the door, but was stopped by the larger of the two. Ushi grabbed her wrist to stop her, and she didn't take kindly to being stopped. She reached for the giant hand holding her wrist and swatted it away, reaching for the handle once again with an annoyed expression. That's when Ushi vanished in an impossible burst of
speed. Grabbing the back of her neck, how did he get behind her so fast? And throwing her against the opposite wall. She slammed into it with a thud, and before she could react, the giant had her by the collar of her mesh armor, his other large fist drawn back ready to strike. Ushi grunted. Uma poked her head out from behind the giant and spoke. "He wants your name," she said, her voice perfectly calm. Anko gave an incredulous look. "What?" she said heatedly. Ushi grunted. Again, Uma translated. "He wants to know your name. And this is the last time he'll ask politely." Politely? He slammed her against a wall and threatened to smash her into said wall with his oversized fist. And he calls that polite? Nevertheless, Anko just wanted to see Naruto, so she relented with a sigh. Joni Mitarashi Anko. Ninja registration 011226. I was informed that Uzumaki Naruto was hospitalized by the Hokage. She sighed again. "I just want to see him." Ushi grunted, letting go of the Dengo-loving woman. "Ushi says you're on the list. You may enter." Jonin Mitarashi Anko. How the hell did the female Anbu operative know what the behemoth was saying? What she didn't know was that Rohan didn't need words to communicate. They were the perfect, most effective Anbu team Konoha has ever seen, and it was due to Inu Teiko and Nezumi Teiko's incredible teamwork exercises. Both Ushi and Uma let Anko enter the room with a nod of their heads. When she entered, Uchiha Sasuke stood from his chair, the kunai in his hands and his Sharingan activated. When he saw who it was, he calmed himself, sitting back down and deactivating his dojutsu. The Anbu operative in the corner didn't even react to her presence. Okami knew that anyone entering that door had to be on the list of names given to them. If anyone who wasn't tried, half the village would know. Ushi was very destructive when it came to orders from Nezumi Teiko. He died before he failed a mission given to him from the blonde, unless of course failing meant saving a comrade. When Anko closed the door, Naruto's eyes opened, but they weren't Naruto's. "Oh, it's you. I was wondering when you were going to show up." Like his eyes, it was Naruto's lips moving, but the voice was far too deep and rough to belong to her knight. "What's going on?" She directed the question at Sasuke, knowing how close the Uchiha was to the blonde. Before Sasuke could answer, Naruto spoke. "They'll be here in a moment. Wait until they show up." Anko was confused for a few minutes before the door opened again, and in came three figures she knew. The Yondaime Hokage, Godime Mizukage, and Hatake Kakashi walked through the door, all of them with a worried look on their faces. "Hokage-sama." Okami bowed to his commander. The Yondaime nodded, recognizing one of his most powerful operatives. "We're all here now," he began. "What has happened to my shadow?" All eyes found Naruto's form and were met with blood-red, vertically slit ones. "That idiot did something stupid again, that's what," the deep voice said in an irritated tone. He sighed. "Let me begin with who I am." The blonde smirked, his elongated canines greeting them. "It's not every day mortals are graced with the privilege of speaking to the mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune." The majority of the room froze. The Hokage and Kakashi knew of Naruto's relationship with the powerful Baijuo, but most of the room, besides Sasuke, had never seen this before. They Kyuubi roared with laughter, the vibrations sounding throughout the room. "Ah, the joy of terrifying humans," he chuckled once more. "I miss this." Mei was the first to speak. "What have you done to Naruto, demon?" Was she the only one upset with him being possessed by the embodiment of hatred? Once again, Kurama roared, with laughter. "You speak as if I could do anything to your precious angel even if I wanted to." Mei and Anko's eyes widened. The Baijuo just very subtly announced he knew of their personal relationships with Naruto. "Naruto is far too powerful for me to take on and has been for years now." He became serious. "The Baijuo respect my Jinchuriki. He is the child of prophecy, and has sworn to save us. All of us." Hearing that was surprising. The Baijuo were supposed to hate humanity. "And I am not a demon. You humans are always so quick to title what you don't understand demonic. And as for your question, you are a few thousand years too young to give me orders." He looked to Hiruzen. "Hiruzen, you may speak to me as an equal, but only because my partner has told me to do so. Ask your questions, but do not think for a moment that I have harmed Naruto." Hiruzen nodded, already knowing Naruto's most important law. The Hokage's word is absolute. What has happened to him? Why are you in control? This was as good a place to start as any. The kid discovered a new form of Senjutsu. Hiruzen and Kakashi's eyes widened. He had found another. He explained it to us that his sage dust was him converting natural energy into yang chakra, bringing form to it in the impure world. Everyone was trying to pay close attention. This was a breakthrough in chakra theory the likes of which haven't been done in years. He viewed his Senjutsu as a number line, the positive side being yang. He discovered that the negative side was yin. Once he had that in mind, it wasn't long before he discovered what yin natural energy could do. He waited for everyone to digest what was just said. "We left the village last night for..." His red, slitted eyes flicked to Anko and Mei, personal reasons. Both women were glad the Baijuo held his tongue. "When we returned, he felt Yugao's broken heart. When we found her, Gecko Hayate was dead." The room went still. "Gecko Hayate is right outside this room," Kakashi announced. "Are you saying that he is an imposter?" he asked seriously. "No. I'm saying that my idiot Jinchuriki decided to risk his own life for his ungrateful sister's fiancé." He scowled. "The yin, half of his sage dust is life itself." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. Naruto was able to give form to the natural energy within the pure world and brought Gecko Hayate's soul back. Everyone but Sasuke's eyes widened. He had already been told of this, even the always calm Okamis. "That's not possible, even theoretically. It's not possible to bring the dead back to life," Mei said. Kurama snorted. "You are but a child, Mizukage. You have no idea what is possible in this world. And you should know better by now." He smirked again. "There isn't anything Naruto can't do." Mei went to speak, but Hiruzen beat her to it. "What happened afterwards? Why are you in control?" Kurama huffed. "That idiot used the new sage dust technique prematurely. He had no idea what all was involved. You can't just bring the dead back to life without consequences." Kakashi, Anko, and Mei looked worried for the blonde. He didn't count on the power of his own will. He shook his head. He somewhat knew that his will was different than others when he created Tengoku Kurito. The natural energy made angels are sentient, or that's what he thought. We now know that it wasn't the angels that were sentient, but his own will. I'm afraid I don't understand. Hiruzen admitted. Even the professor was stumped. Kurama sighed. Humans. Take me for example, he began. I'm a massive accumulation of chakra given sentience. I only have a form because I will it. Sentience is just another name for will. Unlike most humans, Naruto has the greatest willpower I've ever seen, stronger than my own. When something that powerful exists, it's no longer, for lack of a better word, dead. The dim-witted human still looked confused. Kurama shook his head with a sigh. Okay, in simpleton terms, this will of fire you're so fond of speaking of is not figurative with Naruto anymore. His passion to protect, to love, is so great that it's alive. It has a mind of its own. It's Naruto, but it's his passion, his desire. And all that kid desires is to save the world and everyone in it. Hiruzen began to understand. It's like his subconscious mind takes over, and all it thinks about is to protect and serve. Kurama nodded. Yes. Usually this doesn't come of anything, but Naruto. I've never seen or heard of anything like him before in all my years. There was only one man in existence who was ever supposed to wield power like this. Hiruzen had to ask. And who was this man? The Kyuubi was silent for a moment. He had only ever spoken to Naruto about this before, but his first friend, his only friend, trusted these people, so he would as well. My father, the Rikudo Sennin. The Rikudo Sennin is just a legend, isn't he? Anko asked. She had only heard about the Sage of Six Paths once or twice before. He was supposed to be a man-turned-god who gave people his chakra and saved the world from a great evil. My existence proves that he was very real. Kurama replied. He had the power over life and death. He could create anything out of nothing. He smirked. Created the moon. Anko decided to shut up. An ancient old Baiju was giving them the secrets most people would kill for. My father had told us someone would come and reunite us Baiju. He gave the Hokage a look. Hiruzen knew what that look meant. Naruto is that person. That's why I never worried about his ridiculous strength and impossible accomplishments. But now. What is it? Hiruzen asked. The Rinnegan is supposed to be the only thing that can give back life. The fact that Naruto's done it with nothing but natural energy. He shook his head. It worries me. He's far too powerful for a mortal. He already has more chakra than me. That was news to everyone. At the rate he's going to surpass the raw strength of my father in a couple of years. Even Hiruzen was shocked. The Rikudo Sennin was hailed as an actual god. Of course, my father had strength beyond his raw power such as creation, but Naruto is slowly making his way to that plane of existence. He's about to reach divinity. It took my father years to truly ascend, but Naruto is almost there now. He paused. This wouldn't bother me except. Please, tell us. Hiruzen pleaded at the Kyuubi's silence. The prophecy. It states that a blue-eyed boy that played with the Baiju would save the world. Or destroys it. The people in the room froze. Right now there's no doubt in my mind that Naruto will save us all. But there are too many things hurting him right now. He's too selfless. He's lonely and confused. Mei and Anko saw the red eyes of the Baiju meet theirs. This village that he loves so much has broken his image of himself. These ignorant villagers have hated him since his birth because of me. And he's been able to understand that the whole time. He paused, making sure Anko and Mei were looking at him since this applied to the two of them the most. He hates himself. Mei and Anko's hearts hurt. You can only tell someone they're a monster for so long before they start to believe it. He looked at Kakashi and Hiruzen. His mind will decided that if everyone saw him as a monster, then that's what he was. He was able to embrace that, turning it into a way to protect his home, his heaven, but that was just by chance. It could have gone the opposite way and, well, Konoha wouldn't be here anymore, Sasuke chuckled. It's not just chance, and you know it. Kurama looked at the Uchiha from the corner of his eye. The brat could already feel it then. Maybe not, but the fact still remains. He needs the only thing he's ever craved for, ever wanted for himself. And what's that? Hiruzen asked. Kurama didn't speak, but everyone saw him look at Anko and the Mizukage. Back to why I'm in control, he started again. He underestimated his own conscious will, and when he brought Hayate back, his chakra converted itself to healing chakra. Kakashi spoke up. Naruto doesn't know medical ninjutsu though. The Kyuubi nodded. No, he doesn't. But he's lived in a village where the best medical ninja practice it every day. Once again, he underestimated his will, because his subconscious mind was able to use his empathy as well. Everything he didn't pay attention to, his subconscious decided to do it for him. He looked at the door. He knew Hayate and Yugao were behind it. When he brought Hayate back, Yugao had done something Naruto never thought she'd ever do. He growled. She expressed hatred towards him. Kakashi narrowed his eyes in confusion. Why would she do that? They're like siblings. She loves him. Once again, the Baiju's red, slitted eyes met Anko's and Mei's. She blamed him for his death. She thought he should have felt the battle between him and whoever killed him and stepped in to save him. But like I said, we were not in the village, he sighed. This only strengthened his hate for himself. It made him feel like his own desires were a bad thing. His expression darkened. I've never felt pain from him like I did last night. The Kyuubi was honestly worried for his Jinchuriki. It brought out his hatred for himself, and that fueled his selfless desire to help people, and more specifically, help Hayate. He wasn't prepared for the switch to healing chakra, so it took almost all of his chakra in one go. He barely had enough to survive before he asked me to take over. He chuckled. It wasn't a happy chuckle. Even on the verge of death, he thought about the village first. He knew that his body, and more importantly what's within his body, was something too valuable to fall into the wrong hands. He wanted to make sure his body stayed in Konoha. Hiruzen was silent for a moment before he sighed deeply. How long will it take for him to recover? He already has. Kurama admitted. I'm keeping him asleep so that I can explain this to all of you. If it was up to him, he'd push it down. He'd sacrifice the only thing he really wants. Again, Mei and Anko were within the Kyuubi's gaze, and went back to selflessly living for nothing but the protection of Konoha. Is there a way to help him? Kakashi asked. His relationship with the Uchiha runt is already helping him. Sasuke narrowed his eyes at the Baiju. He views him as a brother. And he feels like their relationship will better Konoha since he's training him to be the next Uchiha Madara. He growled. Very stupid idea, but he won't listen to me, he sighed. Other than that, there's really nothing anyone can do except for two certain idiots to open their eyes and accept what they already know is going to happen. Mei and Anko looked at each other, still able to feel their memories, their souls. Where do we go from here, then? Hiruzen asked. Naruto is going to take Sasuke on some super-secret elite training camp for the mentally insane for the month. They'll be back the day before the Chunin exams. Hiruzen nodded. That was the day you were going to decide what to do with their sake problem. In that time, I suggest you make up your minds on what you want from Naruto, he laughed. He's going to be pissed that I told you all of his little secrets, but this had to happen. You need to know that the only thing that's hurting him is all of you. Everyone was silent. They knew he was telling the truth, especially Anko and Mei. Now, I need to speak with the snake lover and son wannabe in private. Kurama announced. No one got his joke about the Inbi since no one knew his name. Nevertheless, everyone except the two kunoichi stepped out. Alright ladies, we need to talk. And what exactly do we need to talk about? Mei asked. The fact that Naruto loves the both of you, and you both love him, and yet, neither of you are willing to compromise. It's not that simple, Anko whispered. Mortals and your idiotic views on love. He shook his head. You've seen his heart, his soul. What else does he have to do to show you that he loves both of you equally? You're suggesting we share him? Mei asked angrily. I don't know what you think love is, but I'm not interested in giving anyone a harem. I'm a woman, not a slut, Kurama sighed. A harem little girl is not what I'm suggesting. He smirked. If Naruto wanted a harem, there are multiple women out there that are more than willing to give him that. He shook his head. That's not what Naruto wants. You look at love like it's only possible between two people. Anko and Mei nodded their heads. My father has 11 children, and he loved us all equally. Mei opened her mouth to counter, but Kurama held up his hand and stopped her. Before you say it's different, truly think about it. All love is the same. You're thinking about intimacy. The two are completely different. How are they different? Anko asked. Love is the feelings of affection one feels towards another. Intimacy is a kind of relationship. It's something you do, not feel. A man loves his wife just as much as he loves his mother. That love, believe it or not, is the same. All that's different is the relationship between the two. Neither could argue with the Baiju's surprisingly detailed and annoyingly correct logic. Both Mei and Anko had never looked at the meaning behind love and intimacy before. In society it's viewed as the same. Neither woman said a word, so the Kyuubi continued. Naruto actually loves the two of you. There was never a time he looked at another woman because all he cared about was you two. He gave them an expectant look. You both know how easy it would be for him to sleep around with whoever he wanted. But he doesn't desire pointless pleasure. He doesn't want you two for his sexual fantasies. He wants you two because you're all he can think about. He just wants to be around you. He just wants to protect and hold you. He's willing to die for both of you, and you're both too stupid to realize that he could make it work. Anko and Mei were silent. Mei, you asked him last night if he ever truly loved you. I'm starting to wonder if either of you ever truly loved him. Of course I love him, Anko shouted, pissed off that he'd even suggest anything else. Don't you dare think I didn't love him. I still do, Mei shouted. Then humans have a fucked up view on love, because if I were either of you, and I had someone like Uzumaki Naruto ready love me, even if it was alongside another, I'd jump for joy. Kurama viewed himself as male, but he technically had no gender, so he was able to view both the male and female sides of a relationship. There's no such thing as the perfect man or person, but Naruto is the closest thing to perfection. His expression turned serious, which was strange because with the animalistic traits the Kyuubi gave the blonde when he was in control always made him look serious. I can't force the blind to see, he began, but I will force this. He was going to give them an ultimatum. Whether you decide to get over your moronic ideals of love between two people, or decide to throw away the love of the one person that can give you everything you desire, make that decision by the time he returns in a month. Because if you haven't made a decision by then I'll make it for you. He narrowed his eyes, and neither of you will get him. Mei and Anko looked at him incredulously. That was not at all fair. Anko even said as much. That's not fair at all, she shouted indignantly. No. What's not fair is the selfishness of you two. Now that hit both Kunoichi hard. Now leave. Naruto's going to wake up soon, and he's going to want to be alone. Mei was going to protest. She wanted to speak with him, make sure he was okay before he left for an entire month, but Kurama was having none of it. Go, he shouted, his angry voice causing both Kunoichi to flinch. They had forgotten that they were speaking to the most powerful of the Baiju, so he decided to remind them. With that said, both women had no choice but to leave. They had much to think about, and they only had a month. Now that Mei thought about it, it wasn't very much time at all. The Baiju wanted to stomp Naruto into the ground. He hated the fact that he was willing to go this far to help him. He just couldn't help it. His friend deserved some happiness. As they left, Sasuke entered. How long have you known? Kurama asked. Sasuke was silent for a moment before a smirk crossed his face. And which villages did you say were participating? A small, hovering man asked. Sunagakure and my very own Odogakure. The taller of the two replied. And why exactly would I want to help you? We've been enemies most of your life. The small man asked. Orochimaru smirked. You haven't checked the bingo books lately, have you? Aniki, that Tsuchikage huffed. And why would I care to do that? He didn't know why the snake Sanin showed up in his country, but he was willing to hear him out. That's why they were here, in the underground compound below Iwatha. He used to speak in private with important guests. Oh, I think you will be very interested in taking a look. A certain shinobi just got his entry updated. Orochimaru took out the black book, turning it to the 33rd page. Aniki was annoyed but decided to indulge the Sanin. Name, Uzumaki Naruto, previously entered as Nezumi, Kamikage, bringer of hope, flee on sight. Affiliation, Konoha Gakure no Sato clan, Uzumaki deceased, family, Namikaze Minato, father, Uzumaki Kushina, mother, Jiraiya, godfather. Age, 13, height, 151.6 centimeters, hair color, blonde, rank, SS class classification, Sage, Censor, Jinchuriki, Kyuubi no Kitsune. Notes, Uzumaki Naruto is the most powerful shinobi in Hai no Kuni. He has very close ties with Nami no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni. It has been proven that he is responsible for the death of the Yondaime Mizukage, the Jinchuriki Yagura. It is speculated that he is responsible for the death of another Jinchuriki, Yotan no Roshi. He's also the second shinobi, the first since his father, to gain the flea on sight mark and the only shinobi to gain it outside of wartime. Recommendations for approach: Na warning, do not anger. Bounty, none has been posted. Aniki narrowed his eyes. So the butcher had a child after all? And he was also responsible for the death of his country's Jinchuriki. The Tsuchikage had made his decision the moment he saw the name of the boy's father. It had already been a week since the little talking the Kyuubi gave them, and Anko had finally made up her mind to go and speak to Mei. She didn't doubt the Baiju's words when he said their indecisiveness would end up in them both losing Naruto. She wanted to speak to the Mizukage. She had felt the woman's life. It was not an easy life. She understood how the woman felt, so Anko thought that if they made their decisions, it should be together. They only had 3 more weeks before they had to make up their minds, and Anko would die before she hurt Naruto. She didn't know if or how she'd share him, but Naruto was worth it. The Kyuubi's words hit home with her, and most likely May as well. Naruto hated himself already for just being him. Having to hate himself for loving the both of them too. It was too much for anyone. Naruto embraced the monster life because that was the only thing he could do. It was a way he could cope. It was his release, his way of waking up from the nightmare that was his everyday life. He may love being a monster now, but it must have been so hard to get to this point. He was just a child and he hated himself. It made Anko hate the villagers. That was counterproductive though, because Naruto loved them. It amazed her how selfless, how strong his heart was every time she thought about it. He was one of those 1 in a million types of people, and the Kyuubi was right, they were idiots. Here they were, just adding to his struggles. All he wanted was to love them, protect them, give them everything they wanted. What was so wrong with that? The fact that he hated himself hurt the snake user to her core. He was the greatest person she'd ever met. He needed to know how special he was, how much he meant to her. That's why, as she stood at the door of the hotel room the Mizukage was staying, she made up her mind. Anko knocked on the door. "Kurama tells me you've discovered who you really are," Naruto suddenly said. The two were taking a short break from their training. Naruto decided to train himself alongside Sasuke. It bettered the training mood if everyone worked up a sweat. "HN," Sasuke replied. He was so exhausted that he didn't even want to talk right now. They rarely took breaks, and Naruto was a damn sadistic slave driver. He couldn't help it though. This was how Kakashi had taught him. "You don't really know what that means though, do you?" the blonde asked. Sasuke shook his head. "No. And I don't really care." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" he asked. Sasuke sighed. It looked like he wasn't going to get much rest. "Whatever we're meant to do. I don't care. I'm done with others telling me how to live my life." Memories of Itachi urging him to cling to his pathetic life rang through his mind. "I figured that standing beside you instead of against you will help me. I am still so angry. I find myself hating everything for no reason." He let out a deep breath. "I'm tired." "Aren't you?" Naruto smirked. Sasuke was definitely different, just like him. "You have no idea how so." "Then let's just stop. Let's end it here, now." I want to be able to love again. I want someone to love me," he said softly, not at all embarrassed. He could be totally honest with Naruto. They were brothers after all. Naruto smiled. "You know, that sounds good to me." His smile turned softer, and a little more serious. "And you already have someone that loves you, Sasuke. You know it." "I know it. Everyone knows it." The cherry blossom replaced Itachi's words. "You just need to accept her. Accept her and let her make you happy." Sasuke's eyes turned to the clouds. He never understood what Shikamaru saw in just watching the condensed water. But now, as tired as he was, he understood. "Give me an extra 5 minutes and I'll ask her on a date the first thing I do when we get back." 3 minutes. Naruto smirked. "Deal?" The Uchiha rolled back over on his side, trying to hide his slightly redder cheeks and small smile. "Silly Sasuke." The Kamikage could see everything. Hayate slowly opened his eyes. He was finally starting to get over being brought back from the dead. It was a strange feeling. There were no after effects, besides his lack of chronic cough, but he felt like he didn't deserve it. He was just a random Tokubutsu Jonin. Why did Naruto risk his life to bring him back? Yeah, he was Yugao's fiancé, but at the time he had been hurt by his sister. He claimed that he'd no longer stay with them, or so Yugao told him. So why did he still decide to help him? He decided to ask him when he got back, but right now, he had more important matters to deal with. He sat up in his bed, yawning as he stretched. He didn't even look at the empty place in the bed. He already knew where Yugao was. He got out of bed, stretching again as he made his way out of the room. Yugao had been excused from service for 2 weeks now. She needed to get her emotions under control. She couldn't stand herself for what she did to Naruto. She knew he could feel her hate towards him. He hadn't done anything wrong, and she had hated him. She felt sick, and the entire 2 weeks Hayate would wake up to an empty bed. He walked down the hallway, coming to a stop at the room Naruto used. He opened the door and entered. All of his stuff was still here, him leaving with his student the moment he woke from the hospital. In his bed, Yugao laid, curled up in his sheets. He walked over to the bed, sighing when he saw her puffy eyes. She was so upset with herself. She'd end up here every night for the 2 weeks he was gone. Hayate didn't know what he could do for her. She wouldn't listen to a thing anyone said. She hurt her Ototo, and she felt like scum because of it. She was supposed to be there for him no matter what. He had done everything for her, and even when she hated him he risked his own life to bring her fiancé back to her. She didn't deserve Hayate, or Naruto. Hayate did the only thing he could do. He laid next to his fiancé, not even surprised when she whimpered and clung to him. She could barely sleep, even in Naruto's bed. He spent the next hour rubbing Yugao's back gently, trying to stop the tears that ran down her face. Yugao was a silent crier, which was even worse. It seemed like she was in even more pain this way than if she cried out loud. Naruto signaled for Sasuke to stop what he was doing. There was an uninvited guest about to show their face. It only took 10 seconds for Gaara to appear at the secluded clearing outside the village. "Ah, the Tanuki makes his appearance," Naruto said with a smirk. "What can we do for you on this humble day, Gaara?" There was no reason they couldn't be friendly. "You know about the invasion, don't you?" he asked bluntly. Sasuke nodded his head. This guy had balls. He could respect that. Naruto did something Gaara didn't expect. "Sure do," he said simply with a smile. "You don't seem to care," Gaara said with a hint of curiosity. "Oh, I do care. It's just..." He crossed his arms and adopted a thinking pose. "Well, think about it like this." His face turned sinister. "You and all the others who think they can take Konoha are like a bug," he said while pointing at Gaara. "And me. I'm the boot," he finished while pointing at himself. Sasuke smirked. "So I dare you to try and raise heaven. Then you and everyone else will see what happens when I'm really angry." Gaara narrowed his eyes. He really wanted to just attack the blonde right now, but Mother kept screaming at him to leave. It infuriated him that she didn't crave his blood. He wanted to prove his existence, and the Kamikage wasn't allowing him to do so. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Gaara felt like he once did. He just wanted to wake up. His method was flawed though. Maybe, just maybe, he could help the Jinchuriki with his problem. It depended on him surviving his assault though, because he was not going to pull his punches. That would be his first step. Surviving. Was there anything else you needed, Gaara? "We were kind of in the middle of something," Naruto finally said after an awkward moment of silence. Gaara didn't say a word. He just turned around and started walking away. "He's like us, isn't he?" Sasuke asked when Gaara was finally out of sight. Naruto nodded. "Maybe." He rolled his shoulders. "Let's get back to it." Sasuke nodded. He was eager to continue. He had gotten over the exhaustion and now looked forward to the burn of his muscles and tenketsu. He was getting much stronger. He could feel it. He felt good. He felt like a monster. Hana rushed into the humble Ichiraku ramen shop, out of breath and wide-eyed, holding a little black book. Within the restaurant a particular bunch was assembled. The first person the Inuzuka Chunin noticed was her two best friends, Mitarashi Anko and Yuhi Kurenai. The next two people she noticed were Sarutobi Asuma and a beautiful auburn-haired woman. She blinked in confusion. "Who's this?" she asked the general group. Anko slurped down the noodles she had in her mouth and slapped Mei on the back in a show of rough friendship. Mei, who also had noodles in her mouth, choked at the surprising gesture. Anko either didn't notice her death glare, or didn't care. "Inuzuka Hana, this is my new sister Terumi Mei, the Godai Mizukage," she shouted in a slur. Apparently, Anko was already tipsy. Mei sighed and grabbed the bridge of her nose with her right hand. "I told you not to call me that, Anko. It just makes this feel all the more weird." Hana raised an eyebrow. "Make what weird?" she asked in confusion. Both Anko and Mei totally ignored the veterinarian, which annoyed her greatly. "Don't take it personally, Hana-chan." Kurenai spoke up. "They did the same to us," she sighed in exasperation. "Anyways, why did you look so shocked a moment ago?" she asked, noticing the bingo book within her friend's hands. Hana's eyes widened again. "Oh," she shouted. "Have you guys checked the new bingo book entries?" She didn't even wait for them to answer before she started again. "I guess Hokage-sama updated Cutie's entry, because there's a whole lot of more info." She quickly turned to the 33rd page. While she was doing this, Mei raised an eyebrow. "Cutie?" she asked. Anko smiled. Naruto. Mei turned back to the Konoha skank, an absolutely dark expression on her face. Maybe Mei was a little tipsy too. I saw his face and decided to check if anything else was added. She showed them the page Naruto was on, pointing to a certain spot. Look. It says right here. Family, Namikaze Minato father, Uzumaki Kushina mother. Kurenai and Asuma's eyes widened. Cutie's the son of the Yondaime Hokage and Kushina sensei. Kurenai turned to the calm faces of Anko and her sister. Did you know about this, Anko? Kurenai asked. Anko snorted. Of course I knew. I'm his woman Kurenai, the snake user said offhandedly. Asuma, Kurenai and Hana's eyes widened ever wider, if that was possible. Anko had just admitted to being the bringer of hope's woman. Asuma was the first to shake off the shock. He cleared his throat. So Naruto's the son of the Yellow Flash? He nodded slowly. I believe it. Not only is he strong like Yondaime-sama, he looks just like him. Hana and Kurenai decided to follow Asuma's lead in ignoring Anko's comment. Yeah, Hana stated. I guess the good-looking genes run in the family. And he asked me to start Suzu's training. I'm training the Yondaime sons Ninken, she said with a playful smile. This time, both Anko and Mei looked at the Inuzuka with angry eyes. They were more alike than either would admit. Did you guys hear about what happened with Hayate? Kurenai asked. Asuma and Hana shook their heads, Anko and Mei deciding to just stay silent. He was killed. Asuma shook his head again. I just saw Hayate today. Kurenai nodded. That's the thing. Supposedly Naruto disagreed with his murder. Hana looked confused. Naruto brought him back. He resurrected Hayate. What? Hana asked intelligently. A friend of mine is in Anbu. She was with the cell that first found his body. Kurenai began. Apparently Hayate had been dead for an hour before Naruto arrived. Mei and Anko were still silent. After touching him, Hayate came back to life, and all of his wounds vanished. Hana and Asuma were very interested in this story. I guess it was difficult because Naruto was hospitalized afterwards. She shook her head. No one has seen him since. Is that true? I mean, it's impossible to bring the dead back to life, right? Hana asked. Kurenai shrugged. He's always saying how nothing is impossible for him. I think he just proved that statement because Hayate's alive. Why hasn't he been seen since? Asuma asked curiously. As the son of the Yondaime Hokage, the man who had at least some knowledge on every technique created in Konoha, the Jonin knew about the Nidaime's Edo Tensei, summoning, impure world reincarnation. He was sworn to keep it a secret though, and he knew that even Naruto wasn't allowed to use such a horrendous jutsu, so he kept quiet about it. I don't know, but Yugao hasn't spoken to me or anyone in 3 weeks. I don't know what all happened that night, but I know that it hurt Naruto. Everyone turned when both Mei and Anko suddenly stood from their stools. They put down the money for their meals and walked off in the same direction, not looking very pleased. What's with him? And since when did Anko know the Mizukage? Hana asked. Kurenai just stared at the retreating forms of the kunoichi. I don't know, Hana. I don't know. She really needed to find out what was going on with her friends. All of them. It was the night before Naruto and Sasuke were going to return to Konoha, and the two had just finished their last insane training session. Both shinobi were exhausted. Their muscles ached and their tenketsu burned. But even through the pain and exhaustion they had smiles on their faces. Both had accomplished what they set out to do. Do you think you can teach that to me sometime? Sasuke asked softly. He was lying on the comfortably cold ground next to the blonde, just staring at the stars that littered the night sky. I don't think it's for you, Sasuke, he replied honestly. I can usually learn anything within a few hours, or at the very most a few days. This took me a whole month, he sighed. I don't know if anyone can learn how to use this again after me. It's ridiculously complicated and far too intricate, Sasuke sighed. Oh well. He was too tired to be disappointed. Some things are just impossible, unless your name's Uzumaki Naruto. Why did you learn it? You're already strong enough without it. Sasuke didn't understand why someone like Naruto would need that technique. Images of Hayate's dead body plagued his mind. He never wanted to see someone he knew and loved like that again. It'd been too slow. But now, with his father's legacy, he would never have that problem again. Sasuke was so exhausted that he passed out, not even getting his Shisho's answer. Now with his father's memory in his mind, he couldn't help but remember the first time he met the powerful Kage. Flashback, this should have happened a long time ago. Nezumi knew Kurama was his partner. He knew that the most powerful Baiju was genuinely ready and willing to help him. He didn't know it until a year ago, but the man who left the key to him was his own father. It was his birthright. Unfortunately, Jiraiya-sensei was less than convinced that the Kyuubi no Kitsune was willing to obey. It wasn't until he returned from Mizu no Kuni that he admitted Kurama was his ally. He couldn't claim that the Baiju were evil anymore. After he completed the second task in Mizu the Hokage gave him, Jiraiya knew that his godson was ready. "Don't worry, sensei. I know who he is. He's my friend, my first friend. He won't betray me." He smirked. "And he wouldn't be able to even if he tried," Jiraiya sighed. "I know. It's just strange for me. I thought you'd be ready for this when you were older." He shook his head slowly. "It just reminds me how eerily precise your father was. He could see the way events would unfold years into the future. He had the sight more than anyone I've ever known." He smiled. "If he could see how you turned out. You're the perfect son, Naruto." Nezumi smiled. He didn't care if he used his name in front of Nico and Okami. They were his right and left hands in Rohan. He could feel his godfather's mind. Jiraiya saw him as his own son. Good. Nezumi always thought of the Toad Sannin as his father too. "Thank you, sensei." He had to sound official. Nico and Okami were still shinobi of the leaf, and Jiraiya was one of the most respected ninja currently a part of the village. The Sannin's face turned serious. "Are you ready?" Nezumi nodded. He'd been ready for years. Jiraiya opened his mouth, and a few seconds later, a vertically long toad made its way into the open. "What's with calling me out, Jiraiya?" The scroll toad from Mount Maiboku asked annoyingly. Jiraiya pointed at his godson. "Minato's boy is ready for the key to Uratora," he said in a commanding voice. The perverted Sannin was always joking around, so a lot of people, and toads for that matter, treated him like the goofball he usually was. However, if you knew the Sennin, you knew exactly how powerful he really was. It was said that Orochimaru was the greatest of the Sannin, and then Tsunade, and then Jiraiya. But when Jiraiya entered Sage mode, he was even more powerful than the heavy Sannin. He was truly a terrifying man to face when he wanted to kill. Uratora knew this was the serious Jiraiya speaking, so instead of making a witty remark, he kept his mouth shut and opened the stomach scroll. "It's time, Nezumi." The Yondaime Hokage began. "It's time for you to walk where no other has walked before. You're about to take your place among the truly powerful shinobi of Konoha no Sato." He smiled. "Take pride, my boy. You're about to join the heavens." Nezumi bowed to his commander. He would do this for Konoha, his heaven, but there was another reason he wanted this. The Baiju. They weren't just tools to be used. He didn't want this power to command. He wanted this power to protect. The Baiju were much more than powerful chakra entities. They were his family. They were his brothers and sisters. He was the child of prophecy, and he embraced that fact. He was a monster as were they, and they belonged together. Jiraiya bit his thumb, sliding the bloody finger across his arm before going into a frenzy of hand seals. "Kushios no Jutsu, summoning technique," he called out. With two small bursts of smoke, the elders of Mount Maiboku appeared. "Ah, Jiraiya boy," Fukasaku shouted happily. "It's been a while." Shima, Fukasaku's wife, smiled, which was a little weird looking since, well, she was a toad. "That it has, Jiraiya-kun." "What's with the summoning?" she asked. Before she could answer, Jiraiya was already summoning again. "Kushios no Jutsu, summoning technique," he called out again. This time the burst of smoke was much, much larger than the last. In all his glory, the great chief toad, Gamabunta, was among the others in the large training ground one, the Hokage's personal training grounds. "Jiraiya!" the chief roared. "It was a bad idea to summon me again." The giant toad was about to scream in anger again until he saw the god of shinobi and his shadow. That's when Gamabunta went silent. Jiraiya began. "Nezumi of Konoha is ready to unlock the power his father left him." He put his arms high into the air, signaling everyone present. Those gathered had been chosen to witness this event. His eyes scanned the faces of those gathered. "Hatake Kakashi," he started with the first one his eyes met. "You were the student of this operative's father. You are practically his elder brother. You are a strong shinobi of our village, and we are grateful for you taking this boy under your wing." Kakashi nodded. "Nico Okami," he started on the next, "the two of you are this operative's right and left hands. You are the sword and the shield that Kamikage wields." The Onbu were silent. They appreciated the words greatly, but they were Onbu. They didn't show emotion, ever. Sarutobi-sensei, his eyes met his teacher's. You are like this operative's grandfather. You are the commander of heaven, and your shadow has succeeded thanks to your teachings." Hokage smiled. "Fukasaku-sama, Shima-sama," he started on the elders. "You were the teachers of this operative's father as well. The Yondaime Hokage learned the honorable scene jutsu from the two of you. You connected father and son, even if you were unaware of it at the time." The toads nodded. Gamabunta, the chief toad, decided to let Jiraiya speak. When his first summoner was serious like this, the giant toad had nothing but the utmost respect and obedience for him. "You were this operative's father's warrior, protector. You helped him, as well as me, fight many battles. Knowing that you are now Nezumi's guardian brings me happiness." Gamabunta raised his head, taking pride in the Sanin's words. He finally made his way to Nezumi. "Anbu operative Nezumi." Nezumi straightened. His sensei only used this tone when the battle-hardened war hero was speaking, and the confidence in it commanded respect. "I was your father's sensei. He was like a son to me, as are you." Nezumi smiled under his mask. "Having a hand in teaching you the shinobi's way is truly an incredible gift. If your father was here, he would have nothing but content for the way you have turned out." He took in a deep breath, hoping Minato and Kushina were here with them. "Your father knew you would one day be ready to tame the incredible chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. He knew his son would surpass even in him. That is why he left you this key." He pointed at the scroll. "This is the key to unlocking the Haki no Funshiki, 8 trigram sealing technique. With it you will open the great gates that hold the Baiju back. With it you attain something no man has ever before. With it you will have the greatest of the Baiju by your side. You are the first man to gain the Kyuubi's respect. That in and of itself is proof that your father knew what you would become." He smirked. "Now take what is yours and only yours, like your father wished." Nezumi also smirked. It was time for him and Kurama to finally become one for real. He stepped forward, his already bloody fingertips pressing against the odd-feeling scroll. It was time for him to fulfill his greatest promise. Kurama would be free. The moment he closed his eyes, he was standing in front of the gates that kept the most powerful Baiju at bay. He was going to rip these bars apart. He felt the Kyuubi's soul. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the impossible blonde child before him. This was without a doubt the one his father spoke of. The boy was about to fulfill a promise made to a Baiju, something that rarely ever happened. He knew he would fight alongside this child for the rest of his life. They were partners. They were friends. They were family. "Are you ready to be free, my friend?" he asked the Kyuubi. Kurama breathed loudly. "I've waited for this my entire life." Kurama had felt trapped in this nightmare since the old Sennin passed. He was never truly free, even if he wasn't trapped in a human. He was a slave to his own hatred. He was tired of just hating. He wanted what only Naruto could give. "I'm ready to wake up, Naruto," he said with the saddest voice the Uzumaki had ever heard from his first friend. This only strengthened his resolve. "Good. Because it's about time you woke up, lazy," he said playfully. Kurama chuckled softly. The blonde then hardened his features, his mask gone in his own mindscape. Blue eyes met red before Naruto lifted up his shirt, kanji appearing up and down his right arm. He brought his hand to his stomach, to the seal the Kyuubi was caged within. He hated cages, and he was set on ridding Konoha of all of them. As he turned his hand, something impossible happened. The hand holding his, preventing him from letting his partner free, belonged to his hero. The hand holding his back was his father's. "Tito-san?" he asked surprisingly. He had always felt the chakra he guessed belonged to his parents, but never before did he think he'd ever meet them. "Naruto," the Yondaime whispered. He then looked at the giant form of the Kyuubi. "You can't have my son, Kyuubi," he said. It was strange though. He didn't speak to the Baiju like he was a demon, which was what most humans did to his kind. He only spoke as a father, worried for his child. That's when something Minato never thought he'd ever see happen. Kurama smiled. "I do not wish to harm my only friend, Yondaime." He looked to Naruto. "I wish to stand alongside him." Minato's eyes widened. He looked back to his son when he felt him begin to turn his hand. "Wait," he shouted. He was so confused. Why was his son smiling? The great gates opened. Minato panicked. He was too late. There was no way Naruto was ready to fight the Kyuubi. He had failed the only mission that truly mattered. He had failed his son. "Tosan," he heard his child's voice. "It's fine. Look." Minato raised his head, opening the eyes he shut in pain. "Kurama is not my enemy. He is my friend." He looked at his son incredulously. "Why you befriended a Baiju?" he asked, shocked. That's when Naruto smiled again. His eyes looked to the left, and when Minato followed, he froze. Kurama smirked as he looked at what the two humans were looking at. Naruto really was impossibly incredible. And then, after a good minute, the father smiled. I knew you'd be the one Jiraiya-sensei spoke about. He turned to his son. But how old are you? How is this? He waved to the right. Possible? He could hardly believe it. Naruto smiled. I'm my father's son, that's how? It was a simple answer, but it was the truth. And I'm 9. 9 today. The Namikaze gave a content smile. He didn't know how his son was so powerful at 9, but that didn't matter much. He had become the shinobi he knew he'd be. Happy birthday, son. That had been one of the many things Minato wanted more than anything when he was dying. To be able to wish his child a happy birthday. Naruto looked uncomfortable. To-san. Aye, he sighed. It is okay, Naruto. The Yondaime suddenly said. He knew exactly what his son was going to say. Shinobi have to do the terrible to protect the innocent from the wicked. If his son was again, he looked to the right this strong, he knew he would have taken lives, many, many lives. Naruto was still silent. But I'm a monster, To-san. The blood that stains my hands belong to the wicked. That's true, but I like taking their lives. And Naruto stopped when he felt the large hand on his head. Sometimes the world needs monsters like you, Naruto. And as a father, I couldn't be happier. Naruto just froze. He had been accepted by the most important man in his life. I don't deserve these words, but I feel like being a little selfish. The yellow flash started. I love you, Naruto, and I'm proud to have you as a son. With these words, Naruto's father vanished, his chakra no longer able to sustain his form. With these words, the QB gave a monstrous smile because he knew what this had done for his friend. With these words, Naruto was sure of himself. He was a monster, and his father accepted him. He would never let his father down. This was the first time the monster felt invincible. End flashback. Sarutobi Hiruzen and Hatake Kakashi stood wide-eyed as they listened to Uzumaki Naruto. His shadow Uchiha Sasuke could only smirk at their shock and awed expressions. Did they truly have little faith in his Shisho's ability? There was nothing Naruto couldn't do, and soon everyone would know it. The two had arrived in Konoha not 5 minutes ago. Their training was done and the village was safer because of it. Naruto was faster and Sasuke was better in all aspects of the word. The monsters had returned to heaven, and now there was no demon, dead or alive, that could hurt their people. But how? Kakashi asked, believing the boy's words were impossible. He really shouldn't though. Why was that any more impossible than what he did for Hayate? He guessed he just thought that after his sensei, the technique developed by the Naidaime's brilliant mind would be lost to the world. When did you start learning Fuinjutsu? Naruto smirked. I've been dabbling in it since I first met Jiraiya-sensei. He gave me everything I needed years ago. I just finally decided to put all of my attention on it. Sasuke wanted to sigh. If a single month was all it took to learn something like that, then he shivered at what his Shisho would become in a couple of years. But how did you learn it in a month? By yourself? Hiruzen asked. He knew for a fact, better than most even, just how powerful his shadow was. He saw with his own eyes what Naruto could do, but this added to the apparent resurrection of Gekko Hayate. It was getting hard to assess the Uzumaki's strength. Naruto smiled. He had already used this to answer a question before. Because I'm my father's son, that's how. And with that, the conversation was over. After leaving the Hokage's office, Naruto had looked at Sasuke expectantly. With a look, Sasuke had smirked and nodded his head. It was strange for the Uchiha. While he was blind, Sakura was nothing but an annoyance to him. She was too loud, too clingy, and much too irritating for him to even think about her without developing a sour face. But now, with his eyes open, she was much more than that. She was his salvation. She was the only source of love, true love, that he had left. He wanted more than anything to be capable of love, both receiving it and giving it. After witnessing the deaths of every loved one he ever had at the tender age of 7 had thoroughly rid him of the emotion, and replaced it with foul, dark hate. Sakura was more than his salvation now. Sakura was now his hope. After seeing his student off to ask a certain cherry blossom to go on a date with him, Naruto began to walk towards the feelings of self-loathing he felt when he first entered the village again. He thought this might happen. No. He knew this was happening. He had felt it after waking up, but he just couldn't bring himself to face her. Yugao was his sister, his family. Having her feel hatred towards him had done more than he wanted to admit. He had lost himself. With her emotions, she had struck him down. He needed to be more careful, because if he would do something so stupid as to risk his life, and that of his true family, then he needed to fix himself. The blonde didn't hate her, actually it was the opposite. He still very much loved her, and her sorry mind strengthened that love. Really, in all honesty, he was going to forgive her for 2 reasons. The more important of the 2 was that he still loved her like an older sister. Everyone hates someone once in a while. It would accomplish nothing to make her hate herself any longer. And the second reason was because he really loved Hayate's cooking. He was just apprehensive because of how awkward it was going to be. If he thought that was going to be awkward, he was in for a real treat when 2 certain kunoichi found him. It was his fault, really. His attention was his eyes looked up towards the sky elsewhere, so he couldn't use his empathy right now. He had only felt Yugao's mind a few minutes before he left the village and a few minutes after he returned. He was practically blind right now. So when he felt 2 sets of hands wrap around his arms, he almost jumped. That, however, stopped when he noticed who it was. Anko? He asked to his left. May? He turned and asked to the right. What's going? He was stopped by the speed May pushed her lips against his. Now, normally Naruto wouldn't have minded this, but with Anko holding his left arm, it was very much awkward. When she finally let up, he looked to see the inevitable look of betrayal on Anko's face, but that too was interrupted when Anko slammed her lips into his. After she finally pulled back, he was very red, and very confused. What the hell was going on? He decided to let his concentration on again, his eyes roamed upwards and see what was really going on. With his empathy back, he was hit like a tidal wave with 2 very distinct emotions. Acceptance and lust. May and Anko had made their decision. They both loved Naruto too much to let him hate himself. If the 2 of them were what he wanted, then they would give him that. He deserved more than them, but if that's what made him happy, then he'd have them, both of them. They were both sporting very red faces and trying to breathe regularly. This was extremely awkward and embarrassing, but they were going through with it nonetheless. They had decided to stay quiet and just express this with their emotions and actions. That's when Naruto did something neither thought he'd do. The blonde Uzumaki unwrapped their arms and took a step back. Turning to him, Mei's and Anko's hearts were angry. They already knew why he did this. He felt that his desires were a bad thing. He still hated himself. That's when Mei took him by the collar, tears trying to escape from her eyes. You idiot! She screamed. Stop hating yourself. Your desires are not a bad thing. Naruto narrowed his eyes in shock. Damn it, Kurama. We've accepted this, she said softly. We want nothing but this now. She all but whispered. Please don't deny this. You want it, we want it. Just. She shook her head. She really didn't want to cry right now. Damn it, you promised. His letter flashed through his mind. She's right, Naruto, Anko stated firmly, taking a step forward. You deserve whatever you want, but this isn't something just you want, it's what we want too. She gave a small smile, something she had only ever showed him once before. Now shut up and open your eyes and accept what you already know is going to happen. She smirked at quoting the Kyuubi. And let us show you what real adults do in the dark. Her smirk turned a little sultry. Mei cited Anko's sexual innuendo. She was very much ready to do just that, but saying it out loud in the middle of the village was a little too much for the cage. Naruto was just looking at the ground. This was what he had dreamt of for years. He was accepted by both of the women he loved. But his desires hindered him, right? No. He would not dump his inability to save Hayate before he died instead of after on them. They were the most beautiful things in his life. They would bring him happiness and joy when he slept. He no longer had nightmares, because their faces were all he saw when he closed his eyes. He couldn't lose them. He wouldn't lose them. They actually accepted him. They were willing to share him. He smirked. They had challenged him. They thought they were going to teach the rookie how it was done. They wouldn't know what hit them, because there was nothing Uzumaki Naruto couldn't do. Anko, Mei, and Naruto disappeared from the streets of Konoha. It had already been 3 hours. Thrust her moans filled his ears. He loved it when she made that noise. Thrust his grunt filled her ears. She loved how rough he was. Thrust God, she felt good. She fit him perfectly, like she too was made for him. He loved it. Thrust God, he was big. He took her breath away with each thrust. She loved it. Thrust I. She moaned again. I'm going to. She tightened around him, followed by her legs wrapping around his waist. If the last 3 hours were anything to go by, she always did that when she was ready. Me too. He grunted again. Teeth together. He began to thrust harder, just the way she liked when she was close. She liked it rougher than the woman resting to their right. I love you, he whispered. He always did that when he was ready. And with those words said, they both released together. Her screams of ecstasy were his favorite part. For a moment, they didn't move. They didn't say a word. All they did was breath heavily and stare into their lover's eyes. Finally, Anko leaned up, and Naruto leaned down to meet her for a passionate kiss. The kiss lasted for a few minutes before they broke it off. Naruto smirked, and in a matter of seconds, Anko gasped. He was ready for another round already. You want to go again? He asked, moving around inside her slowly. When she gave him a predatory look, he had his answer. Mei got to her knees, a pout on her face. Naruto chuckled. You're next, he warned in a playful tone. Mei needed this break before they went at it again, because he wasn't even close to being done. The stupid smile on his face was not missed by either woman. He really was good at everything. He didn't even care that both Kurenai and Asuma were home, them being in Anko's room and all, and could hear everything with great detail. This was just too good to stop and be considerate for others. If they didn't like it, then they could leave. Naruto began to thrust. It was later that night when they finally stopped. The three of them were just laying together, Anko and Mei to either side of him. They were asleep now, thoroughly exhausted from their previous activities. It had been the greatest night of the young Uzumaki's life. He was glad he had waited until this moment to have his first time. Losing his virginity to the women he loved made it all the better. Pushing his empathy to them also helped. Everyone could feel everyone's emotions and pleasure. It was literally out of this world. Yet, something was still missing. His family didn't feel complete. He needed to talk to Yugao, so that's why he was currently out of the bed, a cage Bunshine, shadow clone, taking his place, and putting his clothes on. He missed his Nei-chan, and he would be damned before he put her through any more suffering. He was out the door, making his way to Hayate's house. He sighed. He could feel the mind of the Tokubutsu Jonin. The man felt like he was unworthy. He felt like he shouldn't still be here. Naruto wanted to change his mind as soon as possible. As he walked through the night-covered village, he took in a deep breath. This was his home. This was his heaven. Demons were going to try and raze Konoha to the ground tomorrow. They wanted to bring their foul-tainted darkness and blacken the golden city of God. They would very soon see the folly in their choices, because they had just enraged an angel of wrath. They would soon witness the true, absolute power the Kamikage of Konoha wielded. They would soon witness the power God commands, the power he and he alone can use at any moment. They were all going to die. Hayate held Yugao in his arms as they sat on their couch, relaxing. His fiancée hadn't gotten over her idiocy yet, but she was able to actually function. This had been her 4th day back in service, and she was given the night off since she would be busy tomorrow. The two decided to just sit together and talk. They hadn't done much of that as of late, and they were both too tired for anything else. Hayate was a little upset that since he was technically dead, he couldn't proctor the exams tomorrow. He was told today by the Hokage that Naruto was going to take his place. He understood, but he was really looking forward to proctoring. Ah well, you gain some, you lose some. At least he still had his life. He really wished Naruto would talk to them though. He knew he must have been hurt by Yugao, but she was obviously sorry for what happened. As he was pondering the situation his lover was in, the door swung open, revealing the very person he, and most definitely his lover, was thinking about. Naruto? Hayate said in slight shock. He honestly didn't think that the blonde would just walk into their home again. The Uzumaki didn't say anything. Yugao started to get up from her sitting position when she was pushed back down by her Itoto. Then, he finally spoke. I have something to say to both of you. The tone in his voice was serious. It was his Anbu Teiko voice. I don't believe words express the heart, so I will not be using them. He put his hands on the stunned couple's heads. No more guessing. No more not knowing. We will see everything right now. Their world went white. They could see the way he looked at her. It wasn't lust or territorial in the slightest. They could genuinely see how beautiful he thought she was. They could see the way he acted towards her, in front of others and alone. He was no one but himself, always. They could tell that it was love that he felt for her. They could feel the warmth she caused for him when she entered a room. They were glad that she had him. He was truly worthy of their sister. He loved her, and they knew it. They could see the way she looked at him. He had been just an ordinary person to her for so long. But now they could tell that he was her everything. She felt awake when he was near, they knew that. But this was their sister, so they had to make sure. After feeling the man's true intentions, his heart, they decided that he was the only one fit for her. They could see the love and admiration in her eyes when she looked at him. It was love, actual love. It was beautiful. She loved him, and they knew it. She had hated them. He had died. She still loved them. They brought him back. Nothing more, nothing less. As it should be for family. They understood, and had forgiven. She was their sister, and he was now their brother. They wanted Shashuya. The gold faded from their eyes, and exhaustion hit them. The information overload wasn't as bad as usual, but it still took a lot out of Yugao and Hayate. They had just seen through Naruto's eyes, as if the memories were their own. They could feel the things he felt every day, and it was incredible. It was so detailed, so perceivable. It was like he looked at emotions as colors, and every color spoke to him. Not in the figurative either. The colors the blonde saw actually spoke. It was truly amazing. Now that you see the truth, can we please put this behind us and be a family again? He asked hopefully. He had his women, now he needed his siblings. The tears fell before she launched herself at the boy, embracing him in a tight, motherly hug. She didn't speak, but the way she was nodding her head gave him all he needed to know. Hayate began, but stopped when Naruto started. Because you'll always be my family too, that's why. The Uzumaki had no need for words. How many times did he have to say that? Hayate smiled warmly before joining in on the family hug. Neither of them had much family, so this was a very welcomed embrace. Naruto sighed. This was as good a time as any to tell her. Yugao, he started reluctantly. I'm not a virgin anymore, he said in a very Anko-like bluntness. Hayate froze, and not just because the room dropped 20 degrees. His eyes widened and he suddenly felt the intense urge to be anywhere but here. He knew how his fiancée felt about Naruto's innocence, so it was terrifying to be this close to the purple-haired woman at the moment. Ooh, she asked in a cold voice. Naruto sighed again. If she was this mad about him actually losing his virginity, he wasn't really looking forward to how she was going to react to his first time being a threesome that lasted 7 or so hours. What the hell, it was time to be honest. Mitarashi, Anko and Terumi Mei. He answered honestly. At the same time, she half shouted, half whispered. The Mizukage? Hayate asked at the same time. Naruto gave them a stupid, proud of himself smile, and nodded. That answered both of their questions. And I don't care how mad you are. I still want a meal at Shashuya's. He snickered at his sister's irritated, joyful, and furious face. That woman's face could multitask like no other. The Naruto clone had finally accomplished the task the original gave to him. The moon sat in the night sky surrounded by lazy stars. The air was cold and the entire village was asleep besides the Anbu on patrol. They paid him no mind though, mostly because they had no idea he was even there, but if they did, they would never tell the Kamikage what he could and couldn't do. It was an incredibly clever idea, but the clone absolutely hated the preparation behind it. Having to touch every civilian in only a few hours was hard work, but Uzumaki Naruto could do anything, even if it was a caged Bunshine, shadow clone, of Uzumaki Naruto. This would pay off in the long run, but right now it did nothing but irritate the clone. He knew the boss had to clear things up with Yugao, but he really dumped this on his poor, innocent clone. And the worst thing was that he couldn't afford to prank his creator, since even the bringer of hope's clones were scared of him. All he could do was take whatever small pleasure he could in the fact that all of his exhaustion would transfer to the real blonde when he dispelled. With that in mind, Naruto clone puffed in a small burst of smoke, sending everything to the original. When the memories of the clone he made finally made it to him, Naruto didn't even flinch at the exhaustion met him. It was like a fly, annoying, but manageable. Somewhere, in a place no one knows even exists, a blonde sighed deeply. Of course, after his talk with Yugao, he had left for the night, after spending hours calming her down about his first sexual experience. He knew his sister wouldn't understand right away, but the fact that she was able to calm down at all for the time being was a miracle. They tried to have him stay with them for the night, but he declined. He had 2 beautiful women waiting for him back in Anko's room, and he very much wanted to get back to them. He also wanted to get as much rest as he could since tomorrow he was going to war. And he really was. The Hokage's plan was for him to not only rescue everyone, but also fight off the invasion simultaneously. It wasn't impossible, not now, But it definitely was going to be something. It didn't take long before they woke up, and apparently, all three of them were ready to go again. After only an hour this time, the three were dressed and out the door. That's why they were walking towards the main arena that the final stage was going to be held in, Kurenai and Asuma right behind them. Naruto really wanted to turn around and make conversation with the two Jonin just to make this as awkward as he could, but decided they suffered enough when they saw Anko exit her room with the bringer of hope and Yondaime's Hokage after hearing screams of pleasure all night and this morning. It was amusing, for now. May. Naruto began suddenly. No matter what happens today, I want you to know that Konoha is your ally. And I personally promise that no harm will come to your people. May was confused by the words before she nodded slowly. She trusted him with everything. Hi. Anko, Kurenai and Asuma already knew what the blonde was talking about. The Jonin were briefed by the Hokage. Apparently, Suna and Ado were going to try and crush them. When they heard that Uzumaki, Naruto and Hatake Kakashi were going to lead the assault against the intruders, they all wanted to laugh at how stupid these people were. Sharingan no Kakashi may only be an A-rank shinobi, but he's the closest person to S rank that the village had in the Jonin ranks. He was considered one of the two most powerful ninja in Konoha, right under the bringer of hope. Jiraiya didn't count since he wasn't a registered operative. He was still loyal to only the Leaf, but he had more freedom this way. The rest of the walk was done in comfortable silence. Kurenai and Asuma felt safest when they were together and able to watch each other's back. And with Anko and May at either side, Naruto felt invincible. He was actually looking forward to this. He would protect his women, his family, his people, his village, and he'd get to kill a whole lot of demons. The monster was about to make his appearance again. It had been far too long since he was awake. The world had forgotten who he was, what he was. It was going to be wild. The stands were packed full, the sun was shining down upon them, and the 11 Jonin that made it through were standing in front of one Uzumaki Naruto, the proctor of the third stage. He began to address the crowds. I am Uzumaki Naruto, and I will be proctoring the third stage of the Chunin exams. The minds and hearts of the native Konoha civilians looked at him with disgust. Before we start, the Hokage will say a few words. He pointed to the cage box where Mei Hiruzen and the Kazekage sat. It enraged him that one of his women had to sit next to that bastard. Was he truly that foolish? Did he truly think that that disguise was going to work? The eyes of the Kamikage saw everything. Hiruzen stood. Thanks everyone for coming to the Konoha Chunin selection exam, he said in a booming voice. Like Naruto, Hiruzen was skilled enough to enhance his vocal cords with chakra. We will now start the main tournament matches between the 11 participants who made it through the preliminaries. He gave the stadium a big smile. Please stay and watch until the end. He then gave the Kazekage a look over his shoulder. It was not a happy look. Naruto nodded and began. Alright, guys, this is the final test. His eyes scanned the Jonin among him. The arena is different but the rules are the same as in the prelims. There are none. His eyes met Gaara's. You fight until one of you dies or acknowledges defeat. He then met the eyes of the other Jonin. But if I determine that the fight is over, I'll step in and stop it. You got that? After receiving nods, Naruto called out the first two names. Nara, Shikamaru and Temari, you two stay, the rest of you go to the waiting room. The Jonin not called made their way out of the arena while Shikamaru and Temari stayed. Begin, Naruto declared when they were the only ones on the field. Immediately, Temari took her fan off of her back and held it in an intimidating pose. Alright, lazy, let's get this over with, she exclaimed aggressively. Shikamaru sighed and rubbed the back of his head in a disinterested manner. Women. His eyes drifted to the clouds. Troublesome. Up in the stands, Anko, Kurenai, and Asuma all sat together. Asuma had a confident look on his face, but the two women not so much. He's just running away from her, Kurenai said slowly, trying her best not to offend her lover's student. What's up with your kid, Asuma? Anko asked bluntly. She wasn't one to beat around the bush. It was always like that though. If there was an elephant in the room, she'd be the one to jump up and talk about it, regardless of tension. Asuma decided to ignore her bad manners and speak the truth. Trust me when I say that Shikamaru is most likely one of the only Jonin that will get a promotion, him and Sasuke, if Naruto really is his new sensei. Anko and Kurenai looked doubtful. That kid is like an old man. He likes to take things slowly, he sighed. And unfortunately, he has a nihilistic view on women, so this was a bad matchup for him. Well, he looks like an idiot down there, Anko said, once again, being the blunt woman she was. She was finally getting back to normal. After last night she felt better. Everything was okay, now. Asuma snorted. You'd think that just by looking at him, but he's exactly the opposite. I gave him an IQ test and told him it was a game. The young Sarutobi shook his head. And what was his score? Kurenai asked, curiously. Shikamaru has an IQ of 200, he said bluntly, taking a page out of Anko's book. Said blunt woman, and her fellow female widened their eyes. You're telling me that sexist Gaki down there is a genius? Anko almost shouted. Asuma smirked and nodded. He'll probably pass his father in strategic brilliance in a few years. His eyes never left his student. Shikamaru had just thrown a kunai with his shirt attached to it in the sky. Check. Shikaku? Kurenai asked in shock. Her man had to be overestimating his student because Shikaku had a mind that rivaled the Nidaime's in strategy. Any more brilliant and you'd have the mind of a god. Shikamaru's battle strategy and tactics is good enough to make him Jonin. If he was more dedicated and had the skills to back up his intelligence, he already would have joined our ranks. His eyes took in Naruto's form for a moment. I'm sure Naruto has already noticed him. He's been keeping my student close. It makes me think he's doing something, even more so now that he's apparently taken in Kakashi's student. It's almost like he's building an army or something. Anko looked at him suspiciously. So what if he was? She asked in a harsh voice. Anko, Kurenai scolded. It's fine, Kurenai. He turned to the snake user. I do not believe that Naruto is not loyal to Konoha, not in the slightest. He's probably more loyal than any of us. Anyone that has been under Kakashi's command when he was in the Anbu would never even think about leaving, never mind harming our home. There wasn't a shinobi from Chunin up that hasn't heard of the legendary Anbu operative Inu. He was one of the most famous agents in the Corps, second only to Nezumi. I do however believe that he'll be taking on the most difficult missions given to anyone, and even though Shikamaru is a shinobi like everyone else, I don't wish for him to take those kinds of missions. Not yet at least. Anko still narrowed her eyes, but let the monkey off the hook. She would laugh about this later. She had just defended her lover for the first time since they were actually together. I've got my money on the Suna Kunoichi. That lazy kid's got nothing on her. Kasumi, one of the ninja from Kiri, spoke. Sasuke chuckled softly to himself. Hearing this, Kasumi huffed and looked at him irritatingly. You got something to say, Uchiha? Did the duck butt think since the pineapple was from Konoha that he was superior? No. Nothing at all, Kasumi of Kiri. Now that was a strange name. Mist of Mist. You don't think that Sunanin will win? She asked toughly. Sasuke shook his head. No. Shikamaru is a genius, he's smarter than my Shisho. He'll make Chunin for sure. And who exactly is your Shisho? She asked, clearly annoyed. It didn't help that she was actually attracted to the boy. That actually made it worse. The Kamikage of Konoha. He replied. Kasumi froze. That officially ended the conversation. There wasn't a person in all of Mizu no Kuni that hadn't heard of the bringer of hope. He set their country free after all. A few minutes later, and the match was over. Deciding that staying silent was stupid, she called the Uchiha out on his prediction. I thought you said the Nara was going to win, she said, now a little calmer. Sasuke smirked. No. I said that he'd make Chunin. Kasumi looked at him confusedly. But he lost. Naruto's words rang through his head. We do things right, and our way, or we don't do them at all. It's not that he lost, but how he lost. He did things his own way, and because of the way he did it, he'll definitely be promoted. He saw how confused the girl was. He sighed. You don't have to win to be promoted. And just because you win, doesn't mean you'll be promoted. Naruto's voice was heard throughout the stadium, interrupting their conversation. The next match will be Hyuga Hinata of Konoha versus Kasumi of Kiri. Kasumi smirked confidently. Well, I hope you get a good look at my power because you'll have to fight me sometime. She fist pumped. Sasuke turned back to the arena. Good luck. She didn't show that she liked his words. You're really going to need it. She didn't show that his words pissed her off. Hinata is the heiress of the most powerful clan in Konoha. Kasumi had started walking, but stopped when he said that last bit. I thought the Uchiha were the most powerful clan in Konoha. We were, he said softly. Figuring he wasn't going to speak again, Kasumi left, ready to prove herself to him for some reason. How has your stay in Konoha been so far, Mizukage Dono? Hiruzen asked, curious about the beautiful woman. He had no doubt that this woman was already in love with his shadow. If he were like his Iwa counterpart, he'd use their relationship to better his village, but he was nothing like Anaki. And the fact that Naruto could actually kill him and everyone in Konoha within a few seconds if he pushed him too far was something. Oh, he had no doubt that he'd follow his orders, but after his mind broke he'd probably break everything around him. The scariest part about it all was that it would be easy for the blonde to kill everyone in Konoha. May had to push down the blush that threatened to wash over her face when her mind went to the events of last night. It's been very nice. It's a lot different than Kiri, but I can't really find anything bad to say, she answered honestly. I'm glad to hear that. We try to welcome all of our guests the best we can. Hiruzen replied. The next match is about to begin. May was trying her best to keep her attention on the Chunin that were about to fight, but her eyes kept gravitating towards her angel. It was like she couldn't resist him. It was like he was making her watch him. She really was head over heels for him. As soon as Naruto said for them to start, Kasumi rushed the Hyuga, and Hinata activated her dojutsu. Once Kasumi noticed the girl's eyes, she stopped her rush. The Uchiha had warned her that Hinata was a strong opponent, so rushing someone who wielded the world's most lethal taijutsu was probably not the smartest idea. So plan B it was then. When Zabuza-sensei showed up, he had helped her learn silent killing. That coupled with her strangely advanced usage with Kirigakure no Jutsu, hiding and mist technique, she had become quite the kunoichi. When Kasumi smirked, Hinata noticed the chakra-laced mist rise from the ground. A few seconds later, if that, the two were completely covered in a foggy mist. Since the mist was riddled with her chakra, Hinata was not able to locate Kasumi. This was bad. She was a sitting duck like this. She wanted to wait and use this in a later round, but it looked like she had no choice. Stepping into a Juken gentle fist stance, Hinata sent chakra to her fingertips. She didn't really have to see for this technique to work. Kasumi would do the rest for her. Shugohaki Rakuju Ion Sho protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms, she shouted using the technique Naruto helped her with when he was attached to her team. She had already created it, but with the help the blonde provided, she was able to get it down. Her arms became a blur as thin, sharp, chakra blades were emitted from her fingers, creating a protective dome. It only took a few seconds for Kasumi to get hit a few times by the technique, forcing her to let up on the mist since even she couldn't see in it. With the mist gone, and her opponent injured, Hinata lunged. "Shote, palm bottom," she shouted, thrusting the bottom of her palm into Kasumi's stomach. With wide eyes, Kasumi fell to the ground, unable to move. She had serious internal injuries and she needed a medic right away if she wanted to live. Naruto decided to stop the fight, seeing that Kasumi could no longer continue. Even though it was allowed, he really didn't want anyone dying. After rushing the wounded Chunin to the hospital, Naruto smirked as he called the next two names. Next match, Uchiha Sasuke vs Gaara. This was it. It was time for the Uchiha to show the world who and what he was. Everyone was going to see the bringer of Hope's shadow. The match everyone has wanted to see? The Kazekage said. I've heard interesting rumors, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen looked at Orochimaru and raised an eyebrow. And what rumors have you heard? He asked, going along with his foolish game. Oh, you know that your shadow has acquired a shadow as well. He replied. It was clear as to what he was talking about. And Hiruzen was not happy. This was the perfect time to warn his previous student. Oh, that rumor, he smirked. You see, Kazekage Dono, Uchiha Sasuke has officially accepted an apprenticeship from Uzumaki Naruto. He chuckled. I almost feel sorry for your son. His eyes turned to the two Chunin that were facing each other, ready to start their match, because Sasuke-kun has spent an entire month under my shadow. And if I know anything, Naruto has already done it. Done what? He asked, curiously. Hiruzen did not reply. He just silently watched as Naruto began the fight. Created a monster. The words to begin were blocked out by the bloodlust Gaara felt. Mother kept screaming at him, saying something like his opponent belonged to the blonde Jonin proctoring the match, but he didn't care. He really wanted to prove his existence. He really wanted to wake up. Sasuke was silent, also not moving at all. He took in a deep breath, taking delight in the way he felt. He was awake, and it was time to prove himself to Konoha. He wasn't the last Uchiha. He wasn't the village sweetheart. He was Sasuke, the bringer of Hope's shadow. He was the Kamikaze's eyes, and it was time to show the world what he truly was now. Sasuke vanished. When Gaara suddenly felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, he was confused. Was Mother so upset with him that she didn't protect him? That was definitely the Uchiha's left fist, hitting him directly in the back of the head.
No, it wasn't because Mother was mad.
The reason for Gaara sustaining his first injury, no matter how minor, was because Sasuke's speed had tripled since last month.
Naruto was a sadistic slave driver when it came to training, and he was now a lot stronger because of it.
Sand suddenly shot up from behind the red-haired boy, trying to run Sasuke through, but with no such luck.
Before the sand got within inches of him, Sasuke flipped backwards, going through hand seals as he went through the air.
Within seconds, Sasuke called out the name of his technique. Katen Goenka, Fire Release, Great Flame Flower.
3 giant bullets of fire slammed down on Gaara, erupting into a geyser of flame. The technique surprised a lot of the civilians, but all the shinobi could see that it didn't hurt the Jinchuriki.
When flames went down, Gaara could be seen shielded by sand, completely untouched by the powerful technique. Sasuke smirked. He almost broke though that sand armor of his, so he knew it was possible. Going through the correct hand seals, the stadium lit up with a startling white blue, and the sound of thousands of birds chirping was heard. Gaara had already seen this technique, and the Uchiha had to be close to the target to actually hit him with it.
Smirking, he used his chakra-laced sand from his gourd and wrapped his form into a compact bubble-like sand shield with sharp, sand spears adorning the outside. There was no way he could penetrate the wall, and if he tried, he would be impaled.
So now what would his prey do? Sasuke smirked, mirroring his Shisho. Naruto was very impressed with his student's ability in improving techniques. Kakashi was going to want to learn this one. Lifting up his left arm and aiming the Chidori at the Chunin, Sasuke did something that should have been impossible. Kakashi didn't know what was going to happen, but he knew it was going to be something he wanted to record with his Sharingan. He was able to lift his Hidai-8 just in time to witness it.
Chidori Izo, 1000 bird sharp spear, he said calmly as he watched the bright blue Chidori spear-like blade pierce the supposed absolute defense.
Within his little sand shield, no one could see what was happening, but they could definitely hear the screams. The hawk had made the tanuki bleed.
Naruto's smirk turned sinister as he looked up.
Feathers began to fall. That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.